Hi, I'm Lynn Madera. Thanks for joining us for this episode of our Insights webinar series. Today we're going to cover the Prospect Center. So let me share my screen and we will get started. First of all, I'm going to run us through a few slides in a deck just to set the agenda here, because in our Insights webinar series, we typically follow a structure where we go over the functionality, then we go over best practices for you to leverage the functionality as much as possible. We'll look at advanced configuration, which are things that typically you can customize for your organization, and then a couple of new features that are going to come out in this area. First of all, let's look at the high-level benefits of the Prospect Center. So we refer to these centers as one-stop shops. So basically, the user has one place to go where they can get all of the information or do anything activity-wise that they need to do with a prospect. It's very streamlined so that they can be most efficient in the software and be freed up to have more time with their prospects. Next, we really focus on the visualization of how you're progressing through the workflow or your sales process. We also give you different views of how you can look at the activity from a chronological standpoint, all the way to kind of a scripted notes view if you're just trying to catch up on how the conversations have gone with the prospect. You can do emails, event attendance, manage attachments, everything all in one spot. And so we're basically going to go over all the features here in the slide, and then I will walk them through live inside the system. So there's a lot of bubbles on the screenshot that you can see. We're broken up into three panels, left panel, center, and then on the right. And I really want to focus in on the center panel first. This is where we show the visual of the workflow progress across the top. So this is dynamic as your prospect is progressing through those sales process steps or that buyer's journey. You'll see that this updates, so it's always highlighted and bolded where you are and where you've not been. We're looking at all of the activity that's happened with the prospects or their related contacts. And there's several views, or a few views you can look at here. First, the timeline view, which is done chronologically, grouped by month. Our planned activity is always at the top, so you can access that and complete those. You can look at the workflow view, which is one of our new features, and we'll cover that at the end of the presentation. And then a notes view. We'll also be highlighting this. That's that scripted, I just want to see everything that's been written about this prospect kind of view. We have a wildcard search here, so I can search for any term in the system. Any term in the activity area to get back. Oh, I can't remember which unit I talked to them about. I can look that up very quickly. So the center panel, very powerful. Again, that whole activity progression feature visualization there. And then on the left is the information that we're collecting about the prospect, like in data fields. So this information is collapsible, searchable. I can change layouts. I have access to all the activity that I might want to perform as I'm working with the prospect. We've got a nice little image that you can upload here for your prospects. And then over on the right, we can see all the contacts related. So the primary contact, any of their adult children, anyone that you've linked in to this prospect, and then all of their agreements. So resident agreements, assessments, surveys, whatever it is you might collect from the prospects that you want to contain all in this one-stop shop. Okay. So let's highlight a couple of other features, and then we will dive in. So the activity view, I just gave you the little summary, and here you can see I've dropped open in this image where I can select all these different views that I might want to work from. And so we'll go through that so you can see how that functions. And then as I perform activities in the system, you're going to see we have this kind of overlay methodology, so that as I, for example, want to schedule an appointment with Sue, you can see the appointment screen comes up, but I'm still on Sue's record, right? So then when I complete that, it'll refresh and I'm still with Sue, right? So I'm not managing pop-ups or losing my place in the system. Everything is always linked and layered on top of that prospect record. Okay, so let's actually go look at a prospect live in the system. So we might recognize Bruce from our screenshot. I have Bruce pulled up, and we have a nice visual of he and his spouse there. And I'm just going to look across the top. I can see that he is in the financial or medical approval step still here. So that's always nice to know. And I can see what all the steps are that are available to me, how far I've progressed. And so as a user, this can be very helpful for me if I see that I have a lot of activity and I've only made it, I'm only still in the first step. Maybe I've not been able to progress with this prospect as far as I would like to go. I can also just see, as I am working with them, what are all the steps available to me, which is also going to imply different activities, that I can work towards. Now, here at the view standpoint, I'm on the notes view now, but I'm going to switch over to the timeline view. And so what we'll see is I have all my planned at the top. Everything's broken out by month, as I scroll through. So have some recent, but then you might see I've got some here in July. Then I can go look at that workflow view. Again, this is showing me, how everything has broken out. And now at any time, I can search for note information to remind me of what I've done with Bruce and his family members. So just any quick search. So if I just search for the word move, I can see every time I've done move-in planning or the conversations I had about them moving. And it's looking at not just that title or descriptor, but through my notes. So my conversations where I maybe have put a lot of detail, but I just can't recall exactly when that happened. It's very helpful. And then you'll see the quick filters. So, for example, events and advertising. I can just go here and that singles out when that event happened. And when I open it, I can see, the status and who attended or who responded, for all the contacts that are linked here. So again, just a really quick way to get into that detailed information. Over on the left, I can open up all the data fields that we might be using. So like, for example, personal info, what's important, this is location. So these are all just fields of information that we are still, collecting about the prospect. And I can switch layouts. So maybe I need to look at more of the move-in coordinator information, and that gives me a different set of data that I can open up. Now, keep in mind, I can also search the fields. So I want to get to fields that have to do with residency or resident information. And so I just typed RES and it quickly gives me back all those fields. Okay. And then finally, I have all of my activity. So if I want to, for example, add that appointment in, the overlay comes up, I complete my activity, it goes into the timeline, and I'm done. Here's all my contacts. I can add new ones. I can add contacts that are already in the system, but I can see all the details here. So here's Bruce himself, probably his spouse. And these fields are all customizable. So if there's information that you particularly want to have displayed for your community, that can be done here. And then you'll see my attachments at the bottom. Okay. All right, so that's our overview and what you can access or do inside the system. And so now let's move on to our best practices. So the thing that that we really look for many times in the CRM, especially as a sales counselor, for our sales counselors, is how am I going to manage my day? How can I achieve that? How is the system going to work for me? And we always use the whole red, yellow, green methodology to visually prompt someone as to what activities have gone overdue, what you have planned for the day, and what's due in the future. And you'll see that represented in the Prospect Center, but also in some other areas. So I'm just quickly going to highlight, as you're using the Prospect Center, there are other features here in the system that we really need to focus on for being most efficient, right? So leveraging everything that we can. And if I look at the system, so now I'm on my Prospect and Census tab, where you see the listing of all your prospects. And I'm sorted by my step due date, and I quickly can see what I have to do today, what's coming up in the future, just from a prospect standpoint. And then I can also use my dashboard area. Again, these are full task listings, so I might have some tasks scheduled on someone else's prospect or something I've just put into the system that I need to accomplish. So again, red, yellow, green. I get a quick link to pop open the prospect, go right into that prospect center. Same thing for appointments. Okay, so we really want to leverage this functionality, to help us get through the day, help us plan what we're doing in the future. And if you get into that routine and that cycle, you always have in front of you, what you were, planning to do and what needed to be accomplished. Okay. Our next one, for best practice is looking at that notes view, really leveraging that notes view to help you glean, conversation. And this can be great for obviously a prospect that's been open for a long time, or someone you've had interactions with for a very long time, for years. You might need to refresh yourself on what the conversation has been. So I can read straight through the notes, but I can also search. So in this screenshot, we've searched for paperwork. So anytime I've talked to them about paperwork, and whether it was with the prospect or with one of their adult children, it pops up here. This is great for, our directors if they're trying to learn a little bit about a prospect that a counselor's been working with. I can go to the notes view and read that nice scripted view. Any new sales counselor who might be coming in and taking over a set of prospects. So this kind of conversation scripted view is very powerful and should be included, in how you review and look at your prospects. Oops. And then searching. So we've added, two powerful search mechanisms here on the Prospect Center. And one is the field search. I showed you how I was searching for anything that had RES in it, which pulled up resident related fields. Here's an example of pulling up just the wait list fields. So instead of, having to open up and look through all the fields, I can quickly search or pull up the fields that might be important to me or what I'm looking for. Then on the right, again, this wildcard search that looks across all activities, very powerful, can help me get to exactly what I want just, in a second. Now let's look at some of our advanced configuration, right? So many times when we say advanced configuration, it really refers to how you can customize or make the system really work for your community or organization. And one of the things that we have broken out or extracted, from just the regular field list or the activity area is the deposits panel. And this is whatever, information you are capturing for your revenue structure or how you want to track that information. And it can be per, level of service or per workflow in the system. So this area can be totally customized, based on what you need. And just quickly, if we look at the little quick access bar here across the top, I go to deposits and I have this deposit panel, that's appropriate for the workflow that Bruce is in. Okay. Next on the contact panel, again, this is, typically 80% we're all trying to capture the same information, name, phone, email, address, that kind of thing. But you can customize these panels. If you'll notice in my example, I'm showing a Facebook link, because maybe that's part of our marketing or how we are staying in contact with our contacts is through their social media accounts. So this information, again, can be customized to how your organization wants to capture information about the contacts. And it can be ordered. So maybe you want a specific ordering of information, but that affects how you view and how you add contacts into the system. And then finally, multiple layouts is not a new concept, inside of Continuum. We've always had that capability, and they are permission-based. So based on your role in the community or the application, you have access to a certain number of layouts, and that just continues. That continues on in the Prospect Center. So we've really created, again, this very efficient display of information, but it still leverages all of those permissions and granular kind of security and grants that we already had in place. Okay. And then finally, our new features, and I've just put them both here on the same slide. The workflow view and the progress visual. So it's kind of a mouthful, but this bar across the top of the Prospect Center, where we can see how the prospect has progressed through the workflow, is very powerful. Not just from obviously having that information, but also from learning, the sales process. How this community works, how it interacts with this prospects and the buyer's journey that they go through. So that's new, that's added at the top. And then the addition of the workflow view that shows your activities broken out by step can help you understand where you have spent your time, where you maybe need to spend your time. So it really becomes a really powerful tool to help learn not just the system, but how our community wants to interact with our prospects. And so let's take a quick review of that live here in the system one more time. So if I look at this workflow view again, so I can see here, how things are broken out and organized inside, of the application. And they're collapsible, so I can see, well, they haven't been in the key form, they haven't waitlisted with me, and I can see where they've landed here in the timeline. Okay, thanks again for joining us for the Prospect Center webinar. And we will turn this over now for Q&A and see you again in our next episode.